President Biden, President Obama, President Bush, Secretary Clinton, distinguished leaders and guests, my heart is sad, for I have lost a friend. Alma, Michael, Linda, and Anne-Marie, the remarkable Powell family, I'm grateful to you for inviting me to share my thoughts in this hour of celebration and remembrance. In 1993, when I began serving as America's ambassador to the UN, General Colin Powell was already in his final months as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. At White House meetings, I came equipped with a yellow pad. He brought a laser pointer and an array of multicolored slides. I wore a pin. He wore a lot of medals. I was a mere mortal female civilian. In the wake of Operation Desert Storm, he was the hero of the Western world. On policy, the General and I didn't always reach the same conclusions, and in fact, he would later recount that one of my comments almost gave him an aneurysm. Although we were the same age, he and I were shaped by different experiences and had different ideas and represented different departments. But over the past quarter century, we also became very close friends, an experience I know that I have in common with many of you. The reason is that beneath that glossy exterior of warrior statesman was one of the gentlest and most decent people any of us will ever meet. As I grew to know him, I came to view Colin Powell as a figure who almost transcended time, for his virtues were Homeric: honesty, dignity, loyalty, and an unshakable commitment to his calling and word. These were the same traits he sought tirelessly to instill in the soldiers under his command, the diplomats he led, the colleagues with whom he worked, the readers of his books, the audiences that flocked to his speeches, the students of the Powell School for Civic and Global Leadership, and the thousands of young people who benefited from the America's Promise Alliance that Alma and he championed. He relished the opportunity to connect with other generations. And it's always the right time, he told us, and I quote, to reach out to someone who's wanting to look up, and to each in our own way to help put that fellow American on the road to success. A first-rate listener, and in government the ultimate team player, Colin was nevertheless always true to himself. He could not be moved by any threat or tempting promise to depart from what he felt was right. He had a code instilled by his immigrant parents, honed by Army tradition, and nurtured by more than half a century of marriage. He was also guided by a conscience that, unlike many, never slept. Colin was incredibly cool. People in public life tend to hyperventilate. We open our mouths and the superlatives just gush forth. Greatest, worst, the biggest deal ever, the biggest disaster ever, as if each issue offered a choice between utopia and perdition. Over the decades, I sat in many meetings with Colin where I could almost hear his eyes roll. When it was his turn to speak, he was brilliant at bringing over-the-moon claims down to earth and distilling what truly mattered from what did not. His effectiveness was magnified by his lack of interest in racking up partisan debating points or improving how macho he could be as a negotiator. He cared only about achieving results, and somehow, through the strength of his personality, he made pragmatism charismatic. Colin Powell's legacy of service to the country he loved will long survive his passing, from rescuing fellow soldiers while in combat, to presiding over the rollback of aggression in the Middle East, to orchestrating after 9/11 a global alliance against al-Qaeda, to modernizing the practice of diplomacy. He devoted the full measure of his energy and skills to advancing national interests and to the common good. And he did so in the right way, which is why the Army loved him, why his adversaries respected him, and why within the State Department he was far more popular than his predecessor. I remember the day his nomination as Secretary of State was announced. because Colin drove himself, having escaped his service, over to my house so we could begin planning a smooth transition. Amid the rancor over the 2000 election, he was determined to set the right example. There's a photo taken a few days later which shows him arriving at the State Department, and we're laughing and on the cusp of a warm embrace. I treasure that picture because it captures our relationship and had grown from one of mutual respect to one of mutual affection. It did help that we both had a sense of humor. In his memoir, he recalled that during one session on Bosnia, where I was advocating the use of force, he had felt compelled to explain to me patiently the military's proper role. When the book came out, he sent me a copy inscribed, "Patiently yours, Colin." And when I replied, I signed my note of thanks, "Forcefully yours, Madeleine." In time, we really did become the closest of friends, traveling together for speeches, trading frequent phone calls, and having lunch at his beloved Café Oji. We talked a lot about our gratitude to the country, our pride in our families, and our distaste of aging. He offered me plenty of advice. The last time I saw him, he instructed me to count each step in order to avoid tripping or falling down the stairs. I now do that several times a day, and each time I think of Colin. This morning, my heart aches because we have lost a friend and our nation one of its finest and most loyal soldiers. Yet even as we contemplate the magnitude of our loss, we can almost hear a familiar voice asking us, no, commanding us, to stop feeling sad, to turn our gaze once again from the past to the future, and to get on with the nation's business while making the absolute most of our own days on earth, one step at a time. To that command, we can only reply, "Yes, sir."